right, Kevin O'Connell is here, Coach of the Year, one of the best coaches in football. What's going on, buddy?
How we doing?
I'm doing great. You went sunglasses here.
Yeah,
we're in Florida.
We're still working through the end of another beautiful Minnesota winter, so my eyes haven't really adjusted to. Not a lot of sunlight out here today, but
there's an acclimation period.
But there's an acclimation
it's a ramp
period.
up. I'd say
as you know, ramp up period. That's what we like to call them.
I like that. So I heard you say in a different interview earlier in the off season that a lot of people come up to you in Minnesota and say, Coach, I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you lived somewhere else in the off season. So you're obviously every coach, and actually other coaches have talked about this in the past, where they think you like jet off to Cabo as soon as the season's over and then come back for training camp. So you're in Minnesota all the time. You're in there for the winter. Give me something underrated about the state of Minnesota, living in Minnesota.
That is such a great question. First and foremost, the food scene. I think the food is incredible. All different types of food, all different, kind of styles, whatever you're looking for, a family, my wife and I going out for a date night or, events that we get to go to, the food scene. And then secondly, we're not too far off from it. When that season changes and spring comes around, everybody's outside, everybody's out on, jogging around one of the 10,000 lakes that we have. Everybody's outside golfing, doing whatever it is. It becomes truly you get the best of kind of that all four seasons living that we get in Minnesota. We just love it.
Wow. What you did a nice little Chamber of Commerce promo there for the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, but I love the question though, because I do get, either when I'm flying combine or flying down here, people say, "You're coming from Minnesota. Do you live there in the off seasons?" And I think some folks they think all of that 365 days a year NFL news cycle that exists generates itself while all of us coaches and front office people are on vacation around the world.
You're in the south of France.
Yeah, exactly.
From February until January,
exactly.
Or until July. All right, so you talked a lot about the quarterback journey, and I'm curious. I love when people who know the quarterback position so as well as you do talk about the development process of it. And one of the things you've talked about is it's a lot of times beyond the control of the quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
My phrase is always geography is destiny for quarterbacks.
That's a good one.
You get put in bad situations, a lot of them don't get out of it. You just had a guy in Sam Darnold who I think typifies the quarterback journey, where there were a couple places that maybe failed him, and then you get lost in the shuffle in some places. Guys aren't prioritizing you. All of a sudden, you discover it in mid-career, or however you want to phrase it.
Yeah.
Here's my big picture question to you: if you could wave a wand and get teams to understand one thing about quarterback development, what would it be?
I think two things, if that's all right. I think one, just never underestimate your own role as a head coach, a position coach, even front office, resources around that player, and then all of the other members of the coaching staff, your leadership of your football team, just everybody else's role in quarterback development, and not that you're ever trying to make it so cushy and stress-free that it's too easy, because I think there's a whole nother conversation to be had about the young player nowadays looking for the easy button in the room, and that's more of an NIL transfer portal. We won't go there today, but I think the other, so it's that aspect of it, knowing that it's preaching that it's organizational involvement, and then the second part of that is you can't have that without the warning of let's not overreact at any one particular time. OTAs, training camp, first start, sequence of games, and you really have to be able to take a look at what are we asking the player to do, what is the current situation that we're asking them to operate in, and then ultimately what's the goal and what's the ceiling for the player, and how do we help them reach that without ever hitting the fast forward button on our reactions to what the player's doing, because that's not ultimately what quarterback development is. It's acknowledging where you're at in that journey and how we find ways to, aggressively move along that timeline.
JJ McCarthy obviously had him in camp last year, had him in OTAs. He gets hurt in preseason. I thought he looked really good in preseason.
He was
I thought
having a great camp.
Floor was really high. Where he could use the middle of the field at Michigan. I mean, there were a lot of metrics there that I thought was kind of early success. If somebody's coming to you and saying, Coach. You're on one of those 10,000 lakes, and somebody comes out, pulls their boat up, and says, Coach, why should we believe in J.J. McCarthy this year? We didn't get to see him last year. What's the case that you're telling the Vikings fan?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is when we went through that process last year, and a lot of the things that you mentioned, I noticed. I mean, his ability to throw the ball in windows over the middle of the field, to be accurate in the weighty downs. He was really effective on third downs. I think he had a pretty historical clip on 3rd and 7 pluses, red zone passing. Like, everybody can, say that, percentages of attempts. Well, he didn't throw a lot of bubble screens.
Right.
He didn't throw a lot of RPOs. He didn't do a lot of those things. He was in a pro-style offense where they were running the football. They were marrying the run and the pass on early downs. They needed high-quality execution on some of those weighty downs, and that's really what we like to be with our offense. So I think the fit, and then the other thing I would say is just he's had, that same player has had a year now of being around a guy like Sam Darnold going through his journey, a one-year journey with the success Sam had. He got to watch it. He got to see what meetings were like. What's it like when I install third down plays and we talk about the reads and we talk about the detail of how we're going to play against this opponent who plays like this week. And I think he's been around all that.
Yeah.
So he's not a rookie. He's been able to have, that pseudo redshirt year, albeit without the reps we would have wanted. But I'm really confident and really excited to see him hit the ground running. He's had a great offseason, and I can't wait to get going with him when OTAs actually get going.
I will say, because I went to Miami, he did have a historic amount of third down conversions 2 years ago. I believe Cam Ward broke it this year. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm just
Cam's
saying.
got some really good tape.
He's got some good tape. Last question on this. You mentioned the redshirt year, the pseudo redshirt year. It's obviously not by design. What was the growth you saw? Just in, he can't be out in the field, he can't be doing anything physical, but he's learning from Sam, he's learning from you guys. What was the growth where you say, okay, this clicked even though he's just in meeting rooms?
Yeah, I think the big thing to remember is JJ is still such a young guy.
Yes, and from football perspective, some of these
age and football.
Bo Nix had like 1,000 more attempts in college than
exactly. And so from a standpoint of just being around it, just totally submerged in a football world where there is no class, there is no, there really are no distractions other than for him, we wanted him to focus on getting healthy. Super unfortunate to have that injury happen, and especially coming off of what was a really, really great start for his first preseason game. But really what I would say is for him, he's not hearing anything for the first times. He now can hear us call a play or a concept or a run play or, hey, we can it for this reason, and he's heard all of those things before. So it would almost be like a, what I would equate it to is like when you go to your undergrad for, pre-med, pre-law, and you hear a lot about the things you're inevitably gonna have to eventually have mastery of. That's kind of where he's at right now, and also not putting any pressure on him to be anything more than he's not. And what I thought was really cool about this year also was seeing him that some of those non on the field traits we knew we had of him. He's a locker room energizer, changer. The guys on the team really they love his energy, they love his youthful enthusiasm, but yet he's got kind of an old soul to him. Really, really excited about him.
You mentioned something in the past about how many notebooks you had from just stuff you learned from Bill Belichick. Where you're just sitting there and you're taking meetings. You didn't play a lot in New England, but you're sitting there and you're learning from Tom Brady, who at parts was hurt, but obviously Bill Belichick and the offensive staff there. I always love when people are learning from the GOATs of the game. Like something that he taught you, Belichick, that in a million years you would have thought about in football. Like a million years, you're just like, holy cow, Bill Belichick taught me this, it's in my notebook.
I would probably say for me and where I was at, I came to that team. I think one of the first team meetings I got to go to was one of the first times the team got assembled after going 16-0 and losing in the Super Bowl to the Giants down there in Arizona. But that team meeting was about, there were names, there were guys, I wouldn't even say called out, but just Bill Belichick in front of the team and really in front of any aspect of his role as a head coach was a truth teller. And the power of doing that, and then the power of being consistent and authentically himself every day. That didn't mean that I needed to try to replicate all of those things that I learned in those notebooks and things as the way Bill did it. But what I would say I've learned the most from him is whoever you are as a leader, be authentically that, and it's going to be much easier to then challenge the adversity that will come your way and attack it and all those things. But a particular thing would be, hey, what's it going to take to win a game? You know, each week I can remember him talking about, hey, what's it going to take to beat the Miami Dolphins? This week, this team, hey, we've got a couple guys injured that are going to be out. We're going to need to overcome it by playing this style. We're not going to be able to turn over the football and have penalties and do things to lose the game because we won't give ourselves a chance to win the game. Things like that on the surface you're like, oh, that's a no-brainer. But when your team knows those things, you can't assume anything. And when your team knows those things, you got a great chance to win if they can apply that to their preparation.
When I was in college, I covered the 2007 Dolphins. So they went against the Patriots twice, obviously. And there's the weekly conference call they used to do. So Belichick would talk to the Miami media. And I think it was the Randy Moss game, the whole game. Before that on Wednesday, we talked to Belichick. And the Dolphins were probably 0-11, something like that. And the reverence he had for that game was unlike, and he was talking about Ronnie Brown, and he was like, God, Ronnie Brown's the best player I've seen on tape, like, et cetera, and it was like he was preparing for the 85 Bears. And I know a lot of coaches give lip service to that, but you could tell, like, this was his whole life, was beating this god-awful Dolphins team with Cleo Lemon at quarterback, and Greg Camarillo as the top receiver, and, like, Belichick was just so honed in on that week that I've never seen anything like it, the hyper-focus.
I think that ties hand in hand with what's it going to take to win one game.
One game against doesn't matter the opponent. The whole game.
I know a lot of people rolled their eyes last year with me just saying that over and over and over again. But really, that was mirroring the messaging I had with our team, because I felt like our team was one that if we started to look out in front of, what does this mean? Hey, what if we win this one? What will this game 3 weeks from now mean? That would have been very counterproductive to that team. Some teams are better off handling things that way. That's our jobs as coaches, is to figure out what our team is currently right now at this very moment of this very day and time, and how do we prepare that team to go win a game, and then figure out the rest from there.
One thing I did not know before my research, you were a sports broadcaster for a very small period of time at CBS doing college football. Would you have been good at that if you stuck with it?
I feel like I was all right at it. The crazy thing about that is I felt like I was a product of my preparation in that, which, I used to show up to the, on site there the day of the production meetings, and I'd hand out my kind of scouting reports that I had typed up of both teams. Hey, the San Diego State offense versus the UNLV defense and vice versa, and here's the players that I'm looking for jumped out. I kind of just treated it like I did as a player and now as a coach, where if you totally submerge yourself in exactly the what, the when, the why, the who, and all that of the game, you can provide something for fans. And I think that's what that job is all about as an analyst. And I like to think I could have done that job, and you never know, maybe one day they'll throw me out of this profession and I'll have to, You can
work for Vikings.com. You can write some stuff.
They spend enough time with me. They've had enough of me, I can promise you that.
All right, the fun stuff. We do something called Badasses. Most badass player you've ever been around. Could be as a player, but also could be as a coach, could be as an assistant, doesn't matter. Give me your badass, Kevin O'Connell.
Well, I could easily go the Aaron Donald or the Matthew Stafford route, but I'm going to go with one of my favorites I've had since I've been in Minnesota, and that would be Harrison Smith.
There we go.
Back for another season, 36 years old. He's, my Friday morning coffee partner. Adults, I get him out of the locker room and get him up with me for 30 minutes. But here's what I know about Harrison Smith. You've got to be a badass for this long be such a pillar of consistency at a position where you need to be physical, you need to have great instincts, you need to be a great teammate, communicator. You've got to pretty much be a badass at all those things to sustain at that position for this long. So fortunate to have him on every team I've ever been a head coach of. Harrison Smith's been a captain and a major part of it. And I would not be sitting here talking to you today without him being on those teams.
That's awesome. We do something called One Rep Back. Since you're a player and a coach, You can go either way.
Yep.
But it's a play you can have back, do it over. Could be a play call, could be a sequence, could be something you did as a player. You have the floor, one play, your entire life. You get to do it over again, do it better, do it different.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty easy for me because we've talked a little bit about my New England time. So there was a preseason game back in 2009.
Okay.
Tom Brady did start the game. We were at Washington. Did start the game, and this was Haynesworth, D'Angelo Hall, London Fletcher. There were some real deal players on this Washington defense at the time. Albert Haynesworth falls on Tom Brady, may have, and there's a little injury scare. They pull Tom Brady and all the starters out of the game. I'm going in the game with a lot of our number twos. Washington keeps their number ones in. I didn't play well, but there's one particular play that I'll always remember, kind of a third down, third and longer, maybe it was, and they played two-man. I had a tight end, Chris Baker running down the middle of the field, I believe it was, and please don't fact-check all these names, but this is not McVay-esque of
Wait, you don't have the McVay memory?
I do on coaching, but not on my playing career. I've tried to forget it all, but London Fletcher, two-man, playing underneath. I try to throw it down the middle, force the ball totally. Ball gets tipped up in the air. LaRon Landry intercepts it, and I think I had to go try to get in on the tackle. But it was a big turnover, didn't play well, and I always think, what if? Could I have that one play over again? I could run a little bit, two-man, nobody responsible for the quarterback. Maybe I take off, scramble for 30 yards, throw a touchdown on the next play. That did not happen. Instead, it was a turnover. My quarterback development speed bump in my journey that led to me sitting here at the league meetings as a head coach. So maybe not the worst thing.
The journey worked out. You talk about the quarterback journey, the coach's journey too. Last thing for you, I like to ask everybody this time of year, biggest difference between the 2024 Vikings and 2025 Vikings, aside from personnel obviously, will be what?
I think first and foremost, I think every team, every year, you're reinventing yourself, staying true to who you want to be, principles, core values, every year, but every team is its own. So we've got to restart from the beginning of our entire journey from each year. But I would say this, I think the things we've done in free agency from a standpoint of the interior offensive and defensive lines, couple that with Aaron Jones being back and then, acquiring a player like Jordan Mason, I think a physicality that I want to play with. We've thrown the ball at a pretty high clip, at a pretty world-class effective clip for 3 years with Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold last year, and now what we're going to look like. I want to run the football. I want to get back to the truest nature of where this foundation of this offense was, which is running the football, marrying the run and the pass, generating explosives that way, and trying to be an effective early down offense that can sustain for 17 plus weeks.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.